and welcome to NUFC Matters. It is Wednesday night and it is Retro Show night. And wow, we have got a set of games for the lads tonight. And I've got to be perfectly honest. I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have got with regards to these potential games, fixtures, and players and celebrities. We are covering Northampton, Plymouth, and Rotherham tonight. Yes, I wouldn't say we're scraping the barrel. I don't want to be disrespectful to anybody, but it's going to be tough. And the lads are going to really have to start getting their heads around this over the next couple of weeks. So it's welcome to George, welcome to Steve Wilkinson, welcome to Mitch, Stu Penman, and Steve Hasty. George, over to you for the first game. And which team have you gone for?
Well, my first one's Northampton Town. However, going off piste as I usually do, my favourite Northampton Town story is nothing to do with Newcastle. It's to do with our friends down the road at Sunderland. When I went to, I used to help the North of England Building Society with the sponsorship stuff. And as a return, I used to get invited to the sponsors' lounge at Rotherham Park. So I got invited to the match for Northampton and was allowed to take a certain young man called Neil with me. And we had a fantastic day. Northampton ran the legs off Sunderland. Sunderland's captain and centre-half got a real runaround, poor soul. And, of course, as always happens in the sponsors' lounge, there's all sorts of things happening. And they had a man of the match thing. And they sent a big glass bowl around. And what you had to do was put your man of the match in on a bit of paper and put it in the bowl. And at the end, somebody would draw the winning one out and you'd get a prize. The only trouble is what my son hadn't realised was you're only supposed to put Sunderland names in the glass dish. Well, the real man of the match played for Northampton. I forget the lad's name, a blonde kid. He ran Sunderland ragged. And, of course, whose name got pulled out of the glass bowl but Neil's. And of course, it was a Northampton Town player. Well, I've never heard the sponsors' lounge go so quiet in all the times I'd been to Rotherham Park. Anyway, he got a nice, I think he got a black cashmere scarf or something for your trouble, didn't you? And it didn't last long because I had a little black cat on one end and a little Sunderland badge on the other. So cashmere or not, it never got worn. Anyway, there's my first Northampton story, which I thought was worth telling. Northampton Town, 4th of September 1965. And it was an interesting game for lots of reasons. It saw at least two former Newcastle players come back to play against her, and it saw a Newcastle team which played pretty well actually, and with a good mixture of old and young in the team. Joe Harvey, manager, of course, and 28,051 at the game. A 2-0 result. Gordon, thanks, Steve. That's the programme for the match. And Gordon Marshall was in goal, David Craig, Frank Clark, Stan Anderson, John McGrath, and there's the team in front of your eyes. Jim Ailey, Alan Suddick, Dave Hilly, Ron McGarry, Bobby Cummins, and Trevor Hockey. And the goal scorers were Cummins and Suddick. Cummins' goal just before half-time was a usual thing by Bobby Cummins, a nice little dribble and a slide in from very close range, which went down well with the Gallagher corner. And then the second goal was later in the game with Alan Suddick. And again, it was a typical Suddick goal because he dribbled his way up the right wing, beat about 4 or 5 people, and then nonchalantly walked around the goalkeeper and slid it into the corner. And of course, St James's went wild with a goal like that. However, for me, the star of that particular game that I remember was in fact Trevor Hockey. He ran the Northampton defence ragged and showed why what sort of a player he could be on his day. He didn't always be on his day when he was at Newcastle, but I think he was a better player than we actually saw most of the time. The Northampton team was quite a good team. Some old favourites in and well known. Theo Foley, an old Irish international, was in that team. And in goal was a young man called Brian Harvey. Now, you've heard me talk about Brian Harvey before in this programme, because he was at Newcastle when I was there as a schoolboy, and Brian Harvey was just a little bit older. And also in the team was somebody who some of you might remember, a lad from Gateshead called Tommy Robson, and Tommy was a good left winger when he was at Newcastle. I wasn't sure why we didn't keep Tommy and give him better chance, but he didn't get a very good run out at St James's Park, and he ended up going to Northampton, and he had a decent career at Northampton actually. But as I say, it was interesting to see two former players against their old team. The one good thing from my point of view, or from Brian Harvey's point of view, was neither of the goals were his fault, because I know I've had some fairly rude things to say about Brian's goalkeeping in the past. Their manager was Dave Bourne, a Welshman who had a good reputation in the game as a coach and a manager, and at international level as well. But on this day, it was a Newcastle day, 2-0, and an interesting and game well worth watching. So that's my first game recollection.
And just for those watching, that was Tommy Robson. Okay,
sorry,
no
Robson,
complaints.
What did I say?
No, it's just I've had a few complaints to this channel in the past with somebody with the initials TR. I don't want to start.
All right.
Steve Wilkinson, good evening.
Good evening, everybody. Quite a close link. My first game with the one George has just talked about, because it's the home game before that season when we also played Northampton. But first of all, just before I talk about the game, which actually I wasn't at the game, and there's an interesting story around that one. Anybody who was there last night would obviously saw the game, but if you couldn't go, you could watch it on Amazon. Now one of the major companies for online shopping and parcel delivery. And the reason why I wasn't at the game in 1964 on the 12th of December was that was in the run up to Christmas. And at that time, the organisation that mainly delivered parcels was the post office. And that was where my dad worked, and all hands to the deck at Christmas time. So I always used to go to the match with him at that time when I was aged 11. So it was one of the few games that season I missed, because I could only ever go when my dad was there. But usually got Saturdays off. But on this particular Saturday, he was working for the post office. So it's a bit of irony that last night's game, you could watch it if you had Amazon, but in those days there was no such thing as Amazon. In fact, there was no such thing as television, although I think Match of the Day probably started that season. So to find out about the match, you had to rely on the radio. And again, it wasn't like it was now, where you can listen to the full commentary on Radio Newcastle, or if it's on 5 Live or Talk Sport or whatever. In those days, the BBC provided the service. At that time, it was on a channel called Network 3. It was it had previously been called the BBC had a light program for light music, home for sort of home BBC home service for news, and the third program was for sort of most classical type music. But they also did things like the cricket used to go on that channel. And for about 1 year, for some reason, they changed the name to Network 3. And it was a few years later when, like, so Radio 1, 2, 3, and 4 came in, and 5 more recently. But this game was on Network 3. Now, in those days, they believed that if you told anybody what the game was going to be on the radio, crowds wouldn't turn up, because they would rather stay at home and listen to the match on the radio. And only the second half. That was all they were going to show. So, or talk about. So, I kind of never understood why anybody would not go to watch their local team on the chance that there might be a top game commentary on the second half only on this Network 3. But that was the way it was. So it wasn't until 3 o'clock that day when, because it was a top of the table clash, at the point Northampton were top we were 1 point behind in second place, challenging for promotion from Division 2. So at 3 o'clock, I heard that the game was going to be on. So it was a bit of a consolation for not being there. I was at least going to listen to the second half. But you don't find out. There's no internet or any way of finding out what's going on in the match until you tune in at what was 3:45 to find out the half-time situation. And when the radio went over to them, the score was 4-0. Newcastle were winning 4-0. Trevor Hockney, who George talked about, I was like watching Trevor Hockney. He slicked back hair and he had a strange stance, George, didn't he? He sort of huddled over and he belted down the right wing and got some fantastic crosses in. So I like seeing Trevor Hockney play. He scored the first goal in the 8th minute. And then Ron McGarry got 2 goals in injury time at the end of the first half, but also an own goal was scored. So there was 3 goals in injury time on the end of the first half. And so the game was, here we are playing the team that at that point in time were top of the second division. We were second, but we're winning 4-0 at half time. So I was looking forward to seeing plenty more goals going in the second half. And sadly, I think it was a bit more of an anticlimax. George might have been there. I don't know. But it was right until the actual injury time in the end of the match when another goal was scored. And again, it was Ron McGarry. So he got a hat-trick. And that was his only hat-trick for Newcastle in the time he was with us. And he was a pretty decent player that Joe Harvey had originally seen playing for the Army. I think from what I remember, he was born in Cumbria, and he was a kind of bustling centre forward that really got stuck in, and he played 132 games for Newcastle, scored 46 goals, and this was his only hat trick. But he was somebody I enjoyed playing, and he didn't quite cut it in the first division, although he was playing in that game that George talked about. In fact, the team that played in that game just shows you how things were in those days between the transition from what was a equivalent of a championship side as we were on the game I'm talking about and the one that George was talking about, which was a first division game between the two teams. The only change to the team that George read out was instead of Bobby Cummings, Willie Penman was playing. So it was exactly the same. 10 of the 11 were the same players. So you could go up to the first division with a squad that was effectively second division players. But I think as turned out in the end of that season, we started to struggle a little bit, and further signings were made, which that's a different story. But just a little bit more about Ron McGarry. He's actually still alive, and it's his birthday on Sunday. Actually, he'd be 83 on Sunday, and he was certainly a character. Those that saw him play and actually got to know him will remember that. He actually used to go in. When I was involved with the Gallagher Club, now the Irish Centre in 1979-80 time, he actually used to come in there quite regularly as a guest, and either for one of the nights with entertainment or just for a couple of pints. And he was a good character to get to talk to. But at the time he was playing, he had a reputation for being a bit of a character. He had a motto called "Have goals will travel." There was a Western at the time, I think it was Paladin or something like that. George, you might remember the name of it.
He actually had business cards printed.
That's what I was going to go on about. He got a print at a print 50, and he was giving them out to people as this "Have goals will travel," and he got demand from all over the world. I think Singapore wanted, and then he ended up with thousands of cards of people. And I think still today he did an article in the Chronicle a couple of years ago. He was saying people are still asking him for these cards. So if you've got one, it'll be gold dust. So that's Ron McGarry. He also was the first player I ever saw sent off. Also in this season, I think he took a punch at a Coventry player in a game early in that season, and was sent off. And it was a proper way of getting sent off, not a Kieran Clark pull your shirt back and get a red card like that. When you give a guy an uppercut and he lands on the deck properly, not like a sack of tetties like many of them do these days from just blowing on them. He knew he got sent off, and that was what you got sent off for. And it is a proper punch. So that was Ron McGarry. I think it was a great character at the time. Certainly somebody was one of my first heroes as a centre forward. And happy birthday to him for Sunday. And that was my first game. Newcastle 5, Northampton Town 0. At the end of the season, we finished top. Northampton finished second, and we both got promoted. So that was my first game.
Top Bobby saw you on the telly last night, Steve.
All right, there you go.
Dave Harrison.
I didn't score, unfortunately.
You didn't know, mate. Good evening, mate. Okay, Mitch, on to you.
Well, I've just swapped my games around because I've just seen somebody mentioned in the chat about the game second game I was going to talk about, which is the 19th of April 2010, away at Plymouth in the Championship promotion season. Not so much to talk about the game per se, but stuff around the game. And Steve might want to chip in a little bit if I leave stuff out here. Is at the time I was interim chair of the fledgling trust, and this was obviously our promotion season. And this game, we were champions elect, and if we won it, we'd go up. It was as simple as that. And so Sky, in their infinite wisdom, decided they wanted it on the telly. Except they gave her, I think, was it 6 days' notice? Something like that. It might have even been 5. It was certainly less than a week. That they wanted to move the game from the weekend to Monday night. And obviously, travelling to Plymouth, we had lads who had transport booked, hotels booked, some of it not refundable. People unable to go. I couldn't go because it was shifting into a midweek at that notice. I couldn't alter my diary to accommodate that. And it was the first time we started to realise how much control over the game television had. So as interim chair of the trust, I wrote the Sky Sports. Sorry, no, I didn't. I wrote the Football League, rather. And Football League, to be fair to them, did reply. But the reply was quite revealing. It pretty much said, we do what Sky say. Simple. But there was an utter lack of care or recognition about the fans, and the fans who paid money and lost money on non-refundable travel tickets or on hotel bookings. And it was quite evident, A, they really didn't care, and B, they really didn't have any control anyway. They'd sold their soul to the devil. And it was the first sort of time that I personally anyway realised that the Football League really had zero control of their own competition, and genuinely seemed to not care a bit about it. I mean, was there anything else in those discussions, Steve, that you remember that was from those letters?
Now, Steve, you're on mute.
Sorry, lads. Yeah, I remember the meeting. I remember the phone calls that we had. I remember the emails and text messages that were flying from supporters who were screaming at the trust, you got to do something about this, you got to do something about that. And we all, I remember sitting in the, I think it was in the Irish Centre, and we sat there and what to do. And I mean, it was just absolute bitter anger among everybody on that committee at the time who was sitting there. Fury, absolute fury that we're being treated like this with such short notice. And I think the vast majority of people around the table were in the same situation as you, Mitch.
Aye.
Much as work commitments meant it was out the window, and some lads lost the train money, they lost the hotel money, all sorts of things were just, it was just scandalous. And that was the main point. It wasn't just so much that they'd moved it, but the impact on such short notice. You're absolutely right. And I think when you got that reply back and you put it round, I think that just made it even worse. To be perfect.
Didn't that really did it? The incredulity was unbelievable. I mean, we were all sat there like, is this really what they're saying? Is this the best answer that they can come up with? And could they try and do it whilst seeming to care a little bit, perhaps? Because it was patent, they didn't. They just didn't give a monkeys. I mean, the game itself, early Plymouth charge, they had to win because they were going down as well. So it was a prime television game. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, not a care about the travelling fans whatsoever. But after 20 minutes, Guthrie corner, Carroll looping header, 1-0. And then 8 minutes later, Routledge was played through with a beautiful through ball from Barton. I forgot how good that ball was until I watched it back through the week. And Routledge finished it really well. He finished with aplomb, which is one of my favourite football phrases. And I don't know what else you do with aplomb. Why don't we do other things with aplomb? But you certainly finish with aplomb. Anyway.
If you're as old as I am, you've done lots of things with aplomb, Neil.
All right.
Hey.
Yes, the mind boggles. But and the other thing that has to be said, and that was mentioned in the comment before, the graciousness of Plymouth as a football club and a group of fans. They got relegated that night. And yet, at the end of the game, they let us celebrate. And they played our songs over the PA system. And I think in the modern game, some of this is lost. And I think Plymouth as a club need thanking and congratulating yet again for letting us celebrate that night and helping us celebrate that night. And a night which was technically disastrous for them to drop into the third tier of football. And yet the club that had come to visit and the club that had just relegated them and won the league, and they helped us celebrate that night. And so I think that, Plymouth can't be thanked enough by our fans, or shouldn't be thanked enough by our fans, for letting us have our evening with everything that surrounded the rescheduling of the game and all of that hassle. And that night we won the league, got promoted. And whilst they could have been in their boots and been really miserable and surly about it, they actually joined in with the party. And so thanks again for that, Plymouth.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's my first game.
Great memories that, and of course, one of Stu's close pals was obviously down there on that occasion as well, wasn't he? I think it was JC.
Yeah, him and Paul Mariner.
Yeah. Okay, mate.
He celebrated as well. Well, my first game was when I was 12. It was 21st of January 1987, and we were playing Northampton in the FA Cup. And the Cobblers, as they're known as, they arrived at St James's as runaway league leaders of Division 4. And we were in the first division at the time. And their manager was Graham Carr, who became our chief scout a few years after that. And they were renowned for playing really attractive football. And strangely, there was no Frenchman playing for them, with Graham Carr being in charge, but there was no Frenchman there. And at that stage, they would bear in mind, I think they played 24 games that season. They were unbeaten in 18, and out of those 18, they'd won 15 of them. So it had all the ingredients for a cup upset. But as a young lad getting taken the game, I went with Heath and his dad. And you're just thinking, right, so the FA Cup offered us a bit respite because we were struggling that season in the first division. And it was Paul Goddard who went on a record scoring run in the spring that kept Newcastle up. I think he scored about 7 games off the bounce or something, and we went 9 games unbeaten when it looked like, for all intents and purposes, we're getting relegated. So predictably, it was Paul Goddard who calmed the nerves, and it was after only 3 minutes he scored the first goal. The ball was bouncing about on maybe about 30 yards out, and Dave McCreary, of all people, little Davey Mack, he won a header, and the ball looked over the centre half, and Goddard, as he used to do, he was onto it and finished with aplomb into the bottom corner. So there you go. Everyone does finish with aplomb. You don't really start with aplomb. So that's something worth thinking about. So you think, right, 3 minutes gone, we're 1-0 up, and we're playing a team in the 4th division. You expect the floodgates to open, but they didn't. The three division gap wasn't really evident, and for the next hour, the Northampton, to their credit, they evenly matched us and created much better chances as well. But they end up equalising midway through the second half. There's a guy that played up front for them. I can't remember his first name. Was it Ricky Hill? He scored about 40 goals for them that season, and the cross come over, and Eddie McGoldrick, who became more famous as well as at Palace and got a big move to Arsenal, the Irish international, he won a header, knocked it down, and Hill clinically put it away. to credit him, and you start thinking, oh no, here we go, we're going to get knocked out the cup off a 4th division team. Is it going to be Hereford all over again? And within a minute, we were back we're back in the lead. The Kerry Wharton morphed into Peter Beardsley for a few seconds, and he walked past a couple of players, and then he put a cross in. And one of the midfielders, well, I know who it was, but a midfielder who rarely gets mentioned because he rarely did anything good for us was Andy Thomas. And at the second attempt, he managed to bundle the ball into the net, but the ball actually went in the net off one of their players that was racing back to try and help out. And it just hit off his shin and went in, but Thomas took the credit. So 2-1 up, and we managed to hang on. So like I said earlier, I was just 12 coming on to 13 then. So I had to go to the game with the Heat and his dad. Didn't have to. I enjoyed doing it. So in case he's watching, you're a great man, Brian. And he's a big Hearts fan, like same as my dad is Brian. And Newcastle had signed an ex-Hibs player, Darren Jackson, and he was playing this game, and he missed an open goal near the end. You know, we would have been 3-1 up, was nothing to worry about. So I think the air turned blue. I think that's the phrase, isn't it? You know, so if anyone heard, oh, that's so unlucky, Darren, better luck next time, chap, then I can categorically confirm that was not Brian. His language was a lot more industrial in reference to his Hibernian past, shall we say. So that was my first game. It was just laughing, thinking about how it was cold, and well, obviously this in January, middle of January, is going to be. But we managed to get the win, and once again we think, right, we're on our way to Wembley. We did manage to get the 5th round, but that's as far as we got. So that was my first game.
Great stuff, Steve Hasty.
Evening, guys. I'm going FA Cup as well, but I'm going Rotherham v Newcastle in 1993, January, 4th round of the FA Cup. We got through the 4th round after beating Port Vale 4-0 in the 3rd round. Couple of reasons why I've picked it. One, because the lads nabbed all the other good games, so that was. Secondly, this is the promotion season, and by the time we got the FA Cup FA Cup 4th round, we were 15 points clear in the league, right? So a cup run was on. There was no risk in our eyes that having got to the 4th round so easily against Port Vale, and with a team playing such beautifully exquisite football under Kevin Keegan, that we were going to go all the way. There was no question about it. So we get drawn against Rotherham. Tiny little ground, as you know, Millmore. It held 13,000. It could have been filled with 13,000 Geordies. There's no question about that. So we trooped down. It was controversial before we even kicked off, because at the time Sir John Hall decided that he wasn't going to accept the fact that Rotherham were going to charge 10 quid to get in to Newcastle fans. So he deducted the ticket price, reduced the ticket price to £7.50, sold the Rotherham tickets instead of at tenner, sold them to us at £7.50, and took Rotherham to court, took them to the FA and charged them. That was what he was like at the time. This was probably Freddie Fletcher behind the scenes, because he was the Rottweiler, as we all know. But this was the way it was. They reported them to the FA. But anyway, we get down. We went down in a coach in a minibus, and this was when South Yorkshire. I mean, Mitch has experienced it. Stewie experienced it. I'm sure everybody else has experienced it. South Yorkshire's finest decided that they would step in, and there was roadblock after roadblock after roadblock when you were trying to get into that bottom end of Sheffield / Rotherham area. But luckily, our little minibus had stopped off a couple of times on the way. We'd had a drink. And on the last stop-off point, I remember one of the lads who had organised the trip, he goes, they're going to hammer us when we get there. So make sure there's no drink on the bus whatsoever, on the little minibus. So we're pulled up in a lay-by, we'll finish our cans. We're only a few miles from the ground anyway. And sure enough, they're finishing your cans, we drive on and there's a roadblock and we're shoved to one side. They didn't just stop the driver and ask where we were going. They came on to a minibus, right? This is a minibus with hardly anybody, like 12 blokes. and they started searching our bags and stuff like that. You know, the carrier bags with sandwiches in that the lads had brought and stuff like that. So one of them says, has anybody got any drink on board? And like everybody's going, nah, I'm not a drink. Well, obviously we had. And at which point he goes through this plastic bag, this copper, and he finds a hip flask. So he goes, whose is this? So Mick goes, oh, it's mine. So he goes, what's in it? And he goes, oh, he says, it's just Coke. It's just Coca-Cola, you know. And he goes, in a hip flask. He goes, aye. So he took the lid off it, smelt it, and he goes, smells like something's in there. And of course, Mick goes, oh, damn, he goes, well, words to that extent. Didn't tell us more last put Bacardi in it as well. Well, at that point, I didn't see the funny side. And next thing you know, we're all lined up on the side of the road. We just couldn't believe it. And that was it. You're not good at the game and everything. So you can imagine, like, we were giving Mick loads of stick. Anyway, eventually we got back on and we got to the ground. So the game itself, we went 1-0 up. It was a lovely move. I remember Lee Clark doing what most wingers, wide men, as he was playing at the time, when they pick the ball up wide, don't do anymore. He just went straight down, beat one player, knocked the ball past, ran and crossed the ball into the middle. And there's Rob Lee comes sliding in and he places a beautiful ball into net. Nowadays, there would be, at least 5 or 6 step overs that would have been taken on. San Maximo would have had 3 or 4 goals at deciding to take the man on. He'd have beat him 4 times, and then he would have put the cross in, and it would have either gone wide or there would have been nobody in the box. But that's a different story. So we're 1-0 up. We should have been 2-0 up because at that point, just before half time, if I remember rightly, cross came in from Beresford. David Kelly jumps up, challenges the keeper, and ends up in the back of the net. But the ball's still live; it's still bobbing about. So Kelly decides to lie in the net, in the goal, right? And he's lying in the goal, or gets up and stands. I can't remember he's lying down, and he gets up, he stays behind, and the ball jigs around, gets moved on, and Gavin Peacock manages after a scramble to put the ball in the back of the net, and the linesman flagged for offside. Kelly wasn't even on the pitch; he was in the net, but he got flagged for offside. So it was absolutely hell on, absolute hell. Second half, we came out and it was a bit lackluster in the second half, and Rotherham kind of picked the game up a bit. But again, a controversial goal. They got a free kick. It was only sort of midway through the second half. They got a free kick, and the referee signalled that it was an indirect free kick, and the ball went in, and it was the lad who took the free kick didn't notice that the referee had signalled for an indirect free kick. The kid took a shot, and of course, all our players thought indirect free kick. And he had the shot, and it ended up hitting the post and coming back. Now, if it had gone in the back of the net, it wouldn't, because he'd indicated indirect, it wouldn't have counted. But it bounced off the post and hit their centre half as he was running in, and it went in. So there was hell to pay. And the referee then turned around and said, after the game, and he said, well, I would have probably disallowed the goal, but I didn't, because I had made a mistake. And there was all sorts of craziness went on. But luckily for Rotherham, they managed to hold on. And as I say, the game petered out. There was 13,000 at that match. And we're basically, I mean, I look at the team, you've got Pav and goal, there was Venison and Beresford wide. At fullbacks, you had Scott and Howie, Liam O'Brien. I mean, this is a great team. You've got Gavin Peacock in midfield alongside Clarkey and Bracewell, and you got David Kelly up front and Rob Lee in midfield as well. So it was a smashing team. Substitutes: Kevin Brock, Brian Kilcline. I mean, Keegan at the time felt as though if the second goal had gone in, it would have ended up 3 or 4. But as it happened, it ended up 1-1, and we had a replay to come at St James's Park. So that was my first game. Controversy before the match, controversy on the way to the match, and controversy during the match. Typical Newcastle, but we're still 15 points clear in the league. So it was happy days.
Fantastic. Big shout out to our sponsor, Spider VPN, for all your internet security. Google Spider VPN. They come up at the top of the search list. Protect your numbers on your phone, your connections, whatever. Google Spider VPN. They are the boys to trust. Skipsandbins.com. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy, contract free, and pay as you go waste collection. Also, thanks to L&G Family Funeral Directors, 0191 389 7245, and at qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and the guy who runs our website, NUFCmatters.com. Jab Signature as well. Thanks for making our flyers, jabsignature.co.uk. Hit the bell, hit the Newcastle Legends logo, and subscribe. Hit the thumb up to like the channel. Click share to share to your social media. Drop into the comments to comment and speak to like-minded Newcastle fans. We're also available on iTunes and Spotify and other podcast providers. Quick reminder, we've got some events coming up. Groupon and Voucher, you can get your tickets for Peter Beardsley. The afternoon show Sunday the 30th of January. Tickets selling well for that. Last food bank event of the year for us, Bobix.com for your tickets for me and Supermac on the 9th of December, which is only next week. Drop into NUFCfansfoodbank.co.uk if you want to make a donation to the match day bucket. And don't forget, I will also be at the Dog and Parrot with Malcolm on Saturday, 1 o'clock before the match, 6 o'clock after the game. And it is free entry and kids are welcome. A couple of events for early next year. Mick Mahoney, Super Goalie, January the 14th at the Tyneside Irish Club. Tickets £12. And Steve Watson will be at the Irish Centre on January the 28th. Tickets for that also £12 at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Christmas ideas as well. Don't forget, Pavel Cernacek's book is still on sale in the back page. And at my link, badboysbooks.net, if you want to buy a copy of that for somebody for Christmas. And Every Boy's Dream is still selling well and available also at the back page and on my website, which you can see underneath. And we do have a live show with the Three Amigos this Friday, 5:30 till 7:30. Fun for the whole family, it says there. And Steve with a rather splendid haircut there. Neil doesn't really look different, and I'd look as if I've got no head or hair at all. But thanks for John for supplying that wonderful flyer. George, back to you, mate, for your second game.
Still trying to get over seeing my son as one of the Three Stooges, but that doesn't matter. That's something else. Right. Next game is Rotherham. And it's for me, it's a recent game, but for a one I remember fondly, and a one which for me showed me how what a clever manager of squad and a team selection Rafa Benitez was at the time. Thanks, Steve. That's the program, and what's the next? There's another photo, isn't there? There's a couple more photos. Right. Leave that one there. It was 4-0, and the first scorer of the first goal was Daryl Murphy. And he's exemplified for me how, as I say, Rafa managed the squad. He brought Daryl Murphy in, and a lot of people thought, well, why do we need Daryl Murphy? And the reality is there were certain games in that season and the subsequent season where you needed somebody, a strong centre forward who would take a bit of a battering. And Rotherham at that time had a reputation for being big and rough and nasty. And Rafa put Daryl in, and he repaid him quite handsomely just before half time with a goal. We went on to win 4-0, and then we saw also some of the value of Matt Ritchie at that time, which we haven't seen for a while. He scored 2 goals with his left foot, absolute screamers in our terms, and left Rotherham gasping and huffing and puffing. And they were a big, strong, rough team. And the fourth goal was a beautiful goal by Perez, who took the ball on with his right foot and slotted the ball home with the outside of his left foot, which is the sort of skill that you don't see with many players these days. And completed a 4-0 victory for 52,008 at the game. But remember, this is 2017, and here's the team. Darlow, Clark, Dummett, Lascelles, Ritchie, Yedlin, Shelby, Hayden, Perez, Gouffron, and Murphy. Now, there's not many changes to that team. Just last night's team, really. If you put Darlow back in, you really see what's happened to our team in these last few years. There hasn't been the changes there should have been, but it was a team which Rafa could manage. The other thing I wanted to mention was that the Rotherham manager was Paul Warne, who had a good reputation as a coach, and I don't think got much credit for it. He did some coaching, I think, with the England youth side, but I tried to find out where he is now, and sadly, he doesn't seem to be around anymore. But he had a good reputation, but at his spell at Rotherham, he adopted a Tony Pulis style. That's 6 foot, run at 100 miles an hour, and 13, 14 stone. So you batter down barn doors. And if I actually reflected on the modern era, the recent era, in fact, this season, if you look at what happened to the Mackhams at Rotherham a couple of weeks ago, that's exactly what happened. They got run off the pitch by a very strong, boisterous and rough-necked Rotherham team. So Rotherham, as I say, got beat 4-0, well and truly hammered. A game I enjoyed, not just for the victory, but the manner of the victory, but also, as I said at the start, illustrated to me what a clever man manager and squad manager Rafa was, and that he never did anything without a reason. And I think, as I said, Daryl Murphy showed that off quite nicely. So that's any other pitch, Steve? There's some more pictures, I think. That's an old one for Northampton. That's Ivan Tomey when he went on loan to Northampton. I thought that's a very young Ivan when he was at Northampton. And right, this is in the Rotherham game, and this is the incredible Darlow save. You can see where he is in that picture, right out of goal, and yet he managed to get all the way back when that player got up and went round. I think it's Yedlin that's on the bottom, and make a brilliant save, having made a rick of it all by getting so far out of position. It was untrue, but it ended up being a fantastic save. And one you would remember if you'd been there. And one more picture, I think, Steve. Right, the very first Newcastle Rotherham game, and it's 1953, and here we are on Tyneside, geeing up for another cup run and hoping that we're going to get 3 on the trot was what we're hoping for. And this was, I think, the 4th round. And Rotherham at home, and everybody thought, that's Bobby Mitchell in the picture, everybody thought, oh, this is easy peasy. Well, we got the first goal courtesy of Bobby Mitchell eventually, but Rotherham went on the second half to score 3 and knock out of the cup. So didn't get 3 on the trot, didn't even get to Wembley again, but Rotherham, it was Rotherham that made a mess of it. And at that time, they were only in the 4th division. So it was a pretty sad day for everybody on Tyneside that day. But that was the very first Newcastle Rotherham game, a cup match. And that's my second.
Great stuff. Thanks, George. Steve Wilkinson, on to you for your second game.
Right. Well, I'm back to Plymouth for my second game, and same season that Mitch talked about earlier on, the promotion season of 2009-2010. I'm going to talk about the FA Cup match when we played them in the 3rd round. We actually played down in Plymouth in the first game and got a 0-0 draw. So it was back to St James's about 10 days later for the replay, and the hero of that game was Peter Lovenkrantz, who had joined us when Joe Kinnear was in charge in 2009, and he brought him in initially on trial, I think, to the end of the season. He signed in January and stayed at the end of the season, and then that was the season we went down. His contract was initially terminated because it was only up till the end of the season. But after a while, he was signed back on, and he became a bit of a hero for on Tyneside. Another adopted Geordie, I would say, from over the 3 years he was with us, and 85 games, 29 goals. So he was quite a decent return. That's a 1 in 3. That's a pretty good turn for somebody who, as a forward, quite often played on the wing, but he on this particular game he played through the middle, and he scored a hat trick, and it was his only hat trick in his time with us. And the other thing about it was a perfect hat trick. So it was a left foot, right foot, and a header. So that's as it's known as a perfect hat trick. And but the contribution to that game also was from something that I really enjoyed sitting at. The guy that mentioned earlier on, he's seen me on the television. I sit on the at the front on the east stand while we're attacking the Gallagher in the second half. Usually, we always tend to win the toss or lose the toss, and it stays. So we attack the Gallagher in second half. And at that time, bombing down that wing was Jonas Gutierrez and Jose Enrique, and it really good to see the interaction between the two as each overlapped each other, and both of them made significant contributions to the goals in this game for Peter Lovenkrantz. First goal came in about 10 minutes. We're attacking the Leazes end at this stage. Jonas was doing his normal trickery up the left wing, slid a lovely pass inside to Peter Lovenkrantz, who belted it in with his left foot into the top of the net. So that was after about 10 minutes, just before half time. Second goal, again another move by Jonas down the left, fantastic cross in the middle, and just a sort of glancing header, but a bit of a bullet header, went through the keeper's arms and into the net. So we're winning 2-0 half time, and then on 72 minutes, the hat trick was completed. This time, Jose Enrique going up the left, put it across to the back post. Andy Carroll knocked it across. Kevin Nolan moved it a bit further, and Peter Lovenkrantz picked it up and sort of volleyed it in from about 6 yards with his right foot. So and he went off and did a jig, remember, and doing a sort of tapping his left foot and his right foot in a header, just to sort of highlight that he already knew it was a perfect hat trick, which is something everybody enjoys. Not a massive crowd, only 15,000 there on that night, but a convincing win over Plymouth, and that put us into the fourth round. And I kind of think we went much further. We don't usually, so. So that was that time, and as I said, Peter Lovenkrantz was a bit of a hero. Had been for Rangers in the early part of 2000s, but played there for 6 years, and then came to us and had 3 reasonably successful years with that goal return that I mentioned earlier on. So that was my second game, 3-0 against Plymouth in 2010.
Great stuff, Mitch. On to you for your second game.
Another game against Plymouth, 4th of September 1991. It was a 2-2 draw, and it was a game that basically typified Aussie Ordealers as a team of Bairns, really. Bairns with a sprinkling of experience. They were always vulnerable, I think is the way to put it. But they were always exciting at the same time. And this game pretty much sums it up. Pretty much of a nothing game to begin with until about 20 minutes. The Plymouth keeper got injured, and this was the sort of days where it was 2 subs. And it wasn't common to have a sub keeper on a bench. So the keeper ended up having to be replaced, and they brought a striker on called Salmon, and the defender Nicky Marker went into goal. And typically in Newcastle United, from that point where you think, great, we've got an opportunity to press, we were pretty much all farting no shite. And just before half time, the substitute Salmon makes it 1-0 to Plymouth. We'll come out second half like greyhounds and having a go, but again, like Aussie's teams sometimes did, they tried just that bit too hard. They managed to get themselves caught on the break on 60 minutes and we're 2-0 down. and everybody takes a deep breath at that point. But then eventually the huffing and puffing saw some reward. And on 81 minutes, Franz Carr had an opportunistic shot, and the sub-keeper showed that he had crisp packet hands like Tim Krul, and couldn't keep it out. It bounced off one of his hands onto the other hand, into the back of the net, and 2-1, and we got game on. And in typical Newcastle style at that time, 85 minutes, Mickey Quinn makes it 2-2. We didn't quite have enough to go on and take the game. But the thing about this game, in a nutshell, was what I said at the start. It was one of those games we should have won it comfortably, yet where a combination of too much youthful enthusiasm and a little bit of vulnerability meant we shot ourselves in the foot a little bit. And that was very typical of Aussie's teams. But that's my second game, 2-2 against Plymouth, and a bit of an odd one.
Good one, though. All the best. And Tom says he's had some great stories tonight. He's really enjoyed it. So thanks, Tom. Thanks for your feedback. I know you love the show. Stu, over to you, mate.
My second game's 3 years after the what I just did previously. So we're now on to the 3rd of April, 1990. And it's Plymouth. And I chose this game for 2 reasons. One, because the two memories that come to my head straight away when I was looking through the games to pick was... in this game, although I said it was in April, there'd been snow on the pitch, and we had to, well, not me personally, but the snow had to be cleared off the pitch for the game to go ahead. The second reason is it was 5 days before my 16th birthday, so this was the last game I jibbed in to. You know, I used to run and climb up the wall of the Gallagher, because as you'll be aware, the laws, the legal laws change between being the age of 15 and 16. So that was quite literally no more get out of jail free card. So that was my last unofficial entrance into St. James's. This fixture had been rearranged, I think because of bad weather earlier on, because I know that we played Plymouth away only 2 weeks after this. And it was also the first match of our 6-game winning run, which was very good for us at that time. And we nearly got promoted. This is the team that I think was probably most of our own favourite seasons. I know one of Mitch's favourite players, Roy Aiken, was in the team, and we had the dynamic duo of Quinn and McGee up front. So it was a good season to be watching Newcastle. And with Plymouth, there's a lot of symmetry with this game and the one I did before, because Plymouth were hovering below the relegation, or just above the relegation, and you think, right, this is a home banker. And like the first game, after 3 minutes, there's a goal. Unfortunately for us, it wasn't Newcastle's that scored, it was Plymouth. And there's a guy called Kevin Hodges that played for Plymouth for years. So he's probably a bit of a club legend down there. He was given the freedom of St. James's from the halfway line. The defence just parted and he galloped through, put it away, and we're 1-0 down. And you start thinking, here we go. A game we should win, we're going to get beat. And we end up bombarding their goal for the rest of the half, and through, I would say, bad luck, bad finishing, bad passing, it looked like we were going to go into the half time with still 1-0 down. But then Mick Quinn scored a typical Mick Quinn goal, where he got the ball with his back to the net and he shimmied to go one way, span the other way, and arrowed the ball into the corner. And it was a move I replicated many times at Pitts and Dunstan when we won the league as well. So it's you go one way quickly and stick it in. So that's us ones each. And I'll be careful how I pronounce this one because of certain things. But one of my cult heroes was playing in the team that day. That was Ray Ranson. And I'll exaggerate this a bit, he went on a mesmerising run down the wing. And he's crossed it over. And you're just thinking, right, he's waiting for someone to get it, but the ball hit someone's hand, so you call it handball, but it looked accidental, but we were given a penalty. Mark McGee, because his partner scored one, he thought, I'll better take one. And again, a typical Mark McGee penalty. There was no, he swore there, messing around. He just got the ball, blasted it straight into the net. And that's us 2-1 up. And then within a minute, same as the first game, 1 minute later, the next goal goes in, and it's Mark McGee. And for those who watched the games when Mark McGee was playing, I reckon he scored more than one goal like this. I would say probably 3 or 4. but there's a cross come over and he's headed it from literally underneath the crossbar, and he's scored and it's went in. So we're 3-1 up, and we end up seeing the game out quite cosily. So that was my second game, won 3-1.
Great stuff. And last but by no means least, Steve, you to finish off.
Right. Well, I've gone 10 days on from the previous selection. I've gone to the replay. I thought, we're 1-1. I'll have the replay out the way. So I've picked 3rd of February 1993. There was another reason for picking this. This was exactly a year since Keegan had taken the job at Newcastle. This was Kevin Keegan's anniversary. So, Stewie, you mentioned before. What was it? What was the phrase that you and Mitch used? I can't remember now.
Finish with a plum.
That's right. Games were always a plum, goals of a plum. But I'm going to talk about the fickle fate of the velvet bag, because we go in goals already.
Ooh. You like did we not get Blackburn that year as well?
And we're going to play Blackburn, and the press are already all over us, because we're going to play Blackburn, and it's going to be Keegan against Dalglish. We'd been drawn at Ewood Park against them in the 5th round. So it was going to be a walkover for this in the replay against Rotherham. And quite frankly, the first half was absolutely shocking. It was probably one of the worst performances that Newcastle had put in. To say it was lackluster was an insult to anything that is lackluster, because it was far worse than that. And we were lucky that we went in 0-0 at half-time. But whatever Keegan said at the start of the second half, or at half-time break, we came out in the second half, and within 5 minutes, David Kelly had scored, and we were 1-0 up. And it looked as though there was something that was going to, we're then going to roll them over. But we didn't. We then sat back again. And they came at us. They played really, really well. And they deserved to get a goal back. But they didn't quite get that. But because of a save by Pavel in around about the 70th, 75th, 76th minute, round about that point, where he made a breathtaking save that would have been worthy of any goal of the season save, and that kept us in. And believe it or not, even though we won this game 2-0, it took until the 89th minute for Lee Clark to get that second goal. And it was a scramble of epic proportions in terms of the way that we played. But Clark, he had already missed a sitter where he got clean through, and he hit the goalkeeper with a tame shot. And it looked as though he was going to do exactly the same this time, but unfortunately for us, he buried the ball past the goalkeeper from an acute angle. And there we were, 2-0 up, 1 minute to go, or last minute of the game. There was only 29,000 at this match, or just over. And that was because people would say, oh, you couldn't fill the ground. But the redevelopment was in place and we were restricted. That was actually a full house on that particular day. So there we were. We were heading for the 5th round, thank goodness. I think we've already picked Blackburn anyway. I think we've already said them. So I can tell you, we'll go to Blackburn in the next round. And it looks like we're bringing them back. And that bloke who I hated, Roy Wegley, stepped up a minute ago. Yeah. We were knocked out the cup. And that was what Cup Dreams over. By the way, this was our 42nd game of the season. It was only February. We'd also, during that 42nd game, we had 4 games in the Anglo-Italian Cup, where we played Lucchese, Ascoli, Bari, and Cesena. We didn't get any further than those games. We drew in Lucchese away. We got beat at home of Ascoli, got beat away against Bari, and we drew 2-2 at home against Cesena. But the reason I'm putting that in was by this time, let's face it, we're cruising in the league, and we're concentrating on the league, and we need to get back into the First Division or the Premier League, as it had subsequently been renamed the season before. So that was my game, lads. 2-0. We're on the crest of a wave. We're in the 5th round of the Cup.
Brilliant stuff. Great recollections as always. We will now have a look at some celebrity fans that could support any of the 3 teams we have spoken about tonight. Some of them will definitely be fans. Some of them definitely aren't. But here we go. Guess who that is?
Yorkshire. Looks like a musician.
He is a musician.
Has he got to sing one name, hasn't he? It's just.
It is correct. Yes.
He's a drummer.
Yeah. Oh. Wow. Just need the name.
No. Couldn't tell you.
Woody Bastille.
Yeah.
Unlucky, guys. Unlucky.
Boxer.
Oh,
I've met him. It's Evander
Evander
Holyfield.
Holyfield.
Holyfield, isn't it?
Evander
Yeah.
Holyfield,
Yeah.
yes.
Met him in Las
Strange.
Vegas.
Plymouth,
Big Rotherham
Plymouth.
supporter, obviously.
Plymouth supporter.
Yeah,
That's Jeff Brazier.
correct. Jeff Brazier.
Josh Widdicombe.
Josh Whittaker.
No.
Canadian. Yeah.
No, it's not
No.
Josh.
Never. Must be.
Jeff Whittaker.
Jeff Widdicombe.
Jeff Whittaker, yes.
Yeah, not Josh. We'll
Yeah,
give you half a
right.
point for that.
Oh, that's Master Steve.
I'll give him half a point.
That's Shaquille O'Neal, isn't it?
Shaquille O'Neal.
Yes.
Who's he support?
Yeah. Northampton.
Apparently, Northampton. He sent a rather bizarre message to wish Northampton all the best. I'm sure there's a tenuous link that, like, good luck to Northampton. Somebody says, "Will you send good luck to Northampton?" Suddenly, he's a fan.
Howard
Howard Webb.
Howard Webb. Man United.
Worldwide.
Northampton,
Rotherham.
apparently.
Yeah.
No, Rotherham. Rotherham.
Chuckle Brothers.
Sugar Brothers.
Sugar Brothers.
To you, to me.
To you.
Sure. Oh, come on.
Don't know.
You better get this, lads. He was in what was that BBC TV series called? Life on Mars. That's your clue.
Nope.
Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue, Steve, but I cannot spit it out, unfortunately.
No, got it. Dean Andrews.
Oh God, I'm sitting looking at the name on me on me piece of paper, and I didn't see it.
Okay, we'll go with the players now. And
Can I one more celebrity fan? I
Well-
thought you would have picked up Des O'Connor
oh no, I didn't get that
for
one.
Northampton,
No,
and it's
didn't get that
a good one because not only was he a fan,
yeah.
when he was a young man, he actually played for Northampton.
Quirky fact. There you go.
So there
Okay,
you
we're going to go for the players.
Kel Watts.
Kel Watts.
Sure, yeah.
Kel Watts on loan at Plymouth.
John Carter.
JC.
John Carter.
Never seen him before.
Dan Gosling.
Dan
Dan
Gosling.
Gosling.
Tozer. Ben
Tozer.
Tozer.
Ben
It
Tozer.
was the fact that he had a trophy in his hand and he had a black and white shirt on and threw.
It was
Yeah.
confusing.
Of course,
Ivan Toney.
Ivan Toney.
George spoiled that a little bit by giving us his photo, but I did.
Sorry. Oh.
Played for Rotherham and Newcastle, of course. No,
No.
Connor Newton.
All right.
Joe Kinnear's favourite player next.
Shane Ferguson.
Shane Ferguson.
Shane Ferguson.
Who infamously wanted to sign, not realising that he was already our player.
Yeah, at Birmingham, wasn't he?
Aye.
Is that Billy Rafferty?
No.
No.
The Ian Baird.
Correct, yes.
Wow.
Seeing you looking
Oh,
at your
lovely.
paperwork. You're going through his team there, Mitch, but Ian Baird. Yeah, well done.
Right.
No.
Nope. Oh, hang on. Imre Varadi, Sheffield Wednesday.
Correct. Imre
Wow.
Varadi.
Didn't look like him.
Shout.
Bob Monkey.
Bobby Moncur.
Bob Moncur. The clues on the short on the tracksuit bottoms.
Oh, Colin Calderwood.
Colin
Colin
Calderwood.
Calderwood.
Yeah.
Colin Calderwood.
And last but by no means
There's a
least,
motorbike there.
Zach Graham Carr.
no.
No, is it Bobby Saxton?
Yeah, the clue was who we were sitting next to, Kevin Phillips.
Kevin
Bobby
Phillips,
Saxton. Yeah, Bobby Saxton. Okay, that completes my teasers. George, come to you for your team.
Well, I've done a Rotherham United team as best I can. The only trouble is I couldn't find a goalkeeper, so I've pinched Budgie from one of the other teams. And at 2, Tavernier. At 3, Horace Vukic. 4, Jim Crawford. 5, Bill Thompson, who I actually played with a number of times. 6, Mick Martin. 7, Dan Barlaser. 8, Albert Bennett. 9, for personal reasons, Leon Best. 10, Len White. And 11, Keith Kettleborough, who I think was a much underrated player. So that's using Rotherham players rather than all the others.
Okay, great stuff, Steve.
Well, I've got Budgie in goal as well. It took ages to find a tenuous link that he signed for Northampton in 1996 for just 1 month and never played for them. So amongst many other clubs that he signed for, but didn't play for them. So Budgie in goal, Tavernier, and I've got a 4-3-3 formation. Tavernier on the back, Bill Thompson also, going more modern, Kel Watts, and then Shane Ferguson left back. Midfield, Dan Gosling, Mick Martin, and Gary Megson. And up front, Albert Bennett, Imre Verardi, and Ivan Toney. And I picked Colin Calderwood as manager. He's nearest to a management connection.
Okay, Mitch.
I want to managing the team, Bobby Moncur, because he managed Plymouth. Budgie in goal, although I could have had Andy Woodman both at Northampton.
Yeah.
I've gone with the most unfulfilled potential full-back pairing of James Tavernier and Shane Ferguson. What they could and should have been destroyed thanks to Niall Ranger, in my opinion. Centre-back pairing of Keller Watts and Ben Tozer. A midfield trio beset with injuries which ruined their potential at Newcastle United. Lee Makel, Harris Vukic and Dan Gosling. And then a curious front three of England's Ryan Donaldson, as the Chronicle used to refer to him, as he went through every age group and then disappeared off the planet once he got to the under-21s. Ivan Toney, scourge of Brentford. And then I've gone for, mainly because he was often found sleeping on the settee in my mate's house, because he was knocking off his sister, Mike Jeffrey.
Allegedly. Allegedly there, Mitch. Allegedly.
Well, yeah, allegedly. But he wouldn't even sign Frecky an autograph, you know. He was a miserable bastard.
Okay, Stu. Any room for Andy Thorne, says Jason Brown, in your team?
No, we can't be watching Andy Thorne when on a family show. So, dear me, I put Budgie in goal as well. Back 4 of, whoa, where is it? Ben Tozer, Kel Watts, Bobby Moncur, and JC. And the midfield was Dan Gosling, Shane Ferguson, Dan Barlaser. Forward 3 of Imre Verardi, Ian Bennett, and Ivan Toney. And of course, I had JC as the player coach. Someone's just put something there about Ford in school. That's the primary school I went to. So I didn't see who it was. I'll check later on.
Okay, Steve.
Right, I put Budgie in goal because you had to. I had Bradshaw, Tavernier, Watts, and Tozer at the back. I had midfield of Vukic, Barlaser, and Ferguson. And up front, I had Verardi, Best.
Okay, great stuff, lads. As always, great to go down memory lane. I will be back tomorrow night on a pre-record with Supermac, and then we will be back with the Three Amigos on Friday. And I think we've got time to cram in a Far East show on Saturday before the game against Burnley. We need 3 points in that, lads. But great to have you on, lads. Have a good night. Take care. See you soon.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Cheers, everyone.